Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really profound essay by Pandit Hansraj Shastri. And honestly, it completely flips everything we thought we knew about the word Dharma. I mean, we hear this term all the time, right? But the way society uses it today is actually fundamentally flawed. So let's just strip away all that confusion and look at its true scientific definition based on Shastri's writings. Okay, let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat. A lot of modern, scientifically minded folks kind of suspect that Dharma is just this artificial, temporary crutch. As the text points out, in our current scientific era, it's incredibly common for young, educated people to feel like the concept of Dharma is just fading away from their hearts. They look at it and think, well, that's just a made-up, outdated set of rules. It's totally synthetic. To get to the truth of the matter, we're going to quickly walk through 5 key areas: the modern misconception, Dharma versus sects, the true law of nature, ethics versus true Dharma, and finally, life's ultimate questions. All right, starting things off with Section 1, the modern misconception. So looking at where our modern understanding might have gone a bit off track, there's this really widespread belief among scholars that once a society becomes quote-unquote civilized and scientifically advanced, Dharma just becomes completely useless. The going argument is basically that Dharma was merely a tool, designed to pull early humans out of a wild, uncivilized state of ignorance. And the logic goes that once that transition to a civilized society is completely done, educated people just don't have any practical use for it anymore. But, and this absolutely blew my mind when reading Shastri's work, the exact opposite is actually true. The text offers this brilliant counterargument: true knowledge doesn't destroy Dharma, it actually amplifies our need for it. Think about it. If Dharma was just some byproduct of ignorance or imagination, it would completely vanish as our knowledge increases. But instead, as a person's true knowledge expands, their internal instinct for Dharma doesn't fade at all. It becomes sharper, more intense, and deeply profound. It's really presented as an unbroken truth that the entire welfare of human society actually relies on. Which brings us nicely to Section 2, Dharma versus sectarianism. Here is where a massive point of confusion usually comes in. We have to separate pure Dharma from man-made sects, or sampradayas. So the crucial point here is that Dharma is eternal and unites us in peace. Sects, on the other hand, they're born, they eventually die, and their narrow-mindedness often leads to really destructive conflicts. When you look at the various sects or cults operating in the world today, you just see a lot of division. The text explains that because sects are so numerous and so different from one another, they're inherently prone to mutual conflict. And sometimes this conflict gets so terrifying that it's like a forest fire. It literally burns down its own place of origin. Dharma, though, is single, indivisible, and indestructible. It has zero room for conflict because its whole realm is built entirely on peace, love, and empathy. I absolutely love this analogy from the source text. Picture rainwater falling from the sky. It's naturally sweet, it's clean, it's perfectly pure. But the literal second it hits the dusty ground, it loses that original purity and gets all muddy. In that exact same way, the inherent purity of Dharma becomes polluted when it gets dragged down into the impure, dogmatic environment of sectarianism and blind fanaticism. To put that into perspective, just as pots are made of clay and ornaments are made of gold, sects are simply narrow manifestations of Dharma. You literally can't have a clay pot without the clay, right? And you definitely can't have a gold ring without the gold. The author argues that these various sects and paths are really just tiny, narrow branches on the massive tree of Dharma. They have absolutely no independent existence without that foundational element of Dharma underneath them. Our big mistake is looking at these tiny branches and just assuming, oh, that must be the whole tree. Moving right along to Section 3, the true law of nature. Okay, so with all that sectarian dust cleared away, what actually is Dharma at a scientific level? Now, I always assumed Dharma was just a synonym for religion, but actually, scratch that. It's fundamentally defined here as swabhav. That means the inherent nature of a thing that holds its very existence together. This is where the text gets super foundational. It is the unbreakable law of your being. It's the core property of an object, and if you take that property away, the object literally ceases to exist. The text uses fire to make this concept crystal clear. You can't have fire without heat and light, right? In the exact same way, no entity can exist without its foundational Dharma. Heat and light are the swabhav, the inherent nature of fire. Try to imagine a fire that has zero heat and casts absolutely no light.
It's impossible, because heat and light are the Dharma of the fire. Without its Dharma, no substance in the entire universe can maintain its existence.
So what about us? When we look at the human soul, its inherent dharma consists of three key elements: Sat, which is truth; Chit, which is consciousness; and Anand, which is pure bliss. Just as heat is to fire, these three elements are the natural dharma of the soul. Because of this, dharma is described as the specific element that literally upholds the entire universe. And it's this exact scientific truth that philosophers are referring to when they say Sanatan Dharma, the eternal truth.
All right, let's bridge this to our everyday lives in Section 4, Ethics versus True Dharma. So, how does this grand universal law translate into our daily behavior? A lot of folks figure, hey, basic ethics, or niti, is totally enough to make someone a good person. But the author makes a really fascinating distinction here. The text warns us that ethics without dharma is actually incredibly fragile. Why? Well, because basic ethics are really often driven by a fear of punishment, or selfishness, or even temptation. I mean, even someone who knows right from wrong might do the wrong thing if they're tempted enough. True dharma, however, operates completely outside that realm of fear or selfish reward. It's action-driven entirely by a pure, profound sense of duty. When you really tap into that quiet, steady realm of dharma, you naturally start expressing 5 principles, known as the yamas. These are ahimsa, which is nonviolence; satya, meaning truth; asteya, or non-stealing; brahmacharya, which represents chastity; and aparigraha, or non-possessiveness. The text points out something beautiful here. You simply cannot unlock these deep feelings of universal brotherhood, empathy, and love just through dry scientific discourse or by memorizing textbooks. The sweet music of those feelings, it can only be heard in the quiet, peaceful province of true dharma.
And that leads us to our final stop, Section 5, Answering Life's Ultimate Questions.
Here's where we hit the absolute limits of pure logic and modern science. Look, science is incredible, obviously, but it just doesn't have the strength to stand up to the ultimate why of our existence. The author states that if you want to know why we are even alive, or why you should bother helping someone else, a science textbook simply doesn't have those answers. Science can perfectly explain the mechanics of how the universe operates, but as the text boldly puts it, science simply doesn't have the stamina to stand its ground against that profound question of why.
I'm talking about those massive, keep-you-up-at-night kinds of questions. Who are you? Where do you go after your body ends? What exactly is your relationship to the universe? The text really asks us to confront these deeply complex mysteries. Does the soul progress after the body is destroyed? And maybe on a more practical level, why should I do good for others? Like, what's in it for me? Dry logic just falls completely silent when it's faced with these mysteries.
And so, the author concludes that it is really only through the lens of Sanatan Dharma, this universal, scientific truth of nature, that we can find clear and genuinely satisfying answers. The clarity, the broad, generous vision that you need to untangle the mysteries of the soul, the universe, and the divine. You're only going to find that in the eternal elements of Dharma. You will literally never find this level of profound satisfaction in the narrow dogma of sex, and you won't find it in the cold calculations of pure science either. It's not some artificial creation. It is the ultimate, unbroken scientific truth of reality. So I want to leave you with this one thought to ponder. If Dharma isn't just some man-made rulebook, but is actually the very law of your own existence, are you truly living in alignment with it? Remember, just as fire cannot possibly exist without its heat and light, your truest self cannot thrive if it's disconnected from its fundamental nature. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible essay with me on this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I'll see you in the next one.